I'm Alarik Sandrup. I'm Swedish. I work normally as a Director of Public and Regulatory Affairs for the Lantmännen group. Lantmännen is a Swedish farmers cooperative. It's owned by 25,000 farmers, turnover of around 4.5 billion euros. We're in food, bioenergy, machinery and agriculture. My role is to meet with decision makers, politicians in Stockholm, Sweden, as well as here in Brussels. And my main focus is actually on biofuels because it's very, very policy driven. One could say it's an artificial market actually created by the politicians and the regulations and the incentives. I'm also the president of ePURE, the Ethanol Association here in Europe. I've been that since May, and so far so good as a president. It's a well-functioning association with a good secretariat here in Brussels. My background is mainly agriculture. I have a degree in agricultural economics, and I've been working for Lantmännen for around 10 years. I've been working in Malawi actually with the development of agriculture, and before that I was working for the Swedish Farmers Union. No, not really. It's well known that first-generation biofuels are not really the big favorite of the European Commission and also some other decision makers here in Brussels. And we know we have, for example, the multipliers that is giving, let's say, an extra bonus to, for example, used cooking oil. Electromobility is also very much favored by the decision makers. So I don't think we have a level playing field at all, which is very, very sad. And I think it's not good for the climate, it's not good for the taxpayers and the motorists, because this is not pushing the policy and the whole system in the most cost-effective direction, because I'm very convinced that the first-generation biofuels, and especially ethanol, is the cheapest way of decarbonizing the European transport sector. Yes. Very much of the CO2 or the greenhouse gas emissions from the whole value chain, from field to tank, so to say, is coming from farming, actually, the cultivation and so on. There is a lot of different options and technologies you can use. You could use, for example, biofuels to run the tractors, the combines, transports. You can use, we will in a few years' time actually start using CO2 neutral, fossil-free nitrogen. We have an agreement with Yara, the global fertilizer producer, and I think it's in 2022 or 23 we will be starting using that in a pilot project. It's also about cultivation of the soil, whether you're cultivating it intensively or not. I think there are also a lot of other technologies you can apply, and I think very important is also increased productivity in general. That always helps. If you can increase the yield per hectare or per kilo of nitrogen or per liter of fuel, that will bring a lot good to the whole greenhouse gas calculations. Right. Yes, it's true. We have today, I think, around 22% of biofuels in the total fuel consumption, which is, I think, second highest in the world. It's only Brazil that is on a higher level. We've had a long-term policy in Sweden. We've been working on biofuels for, I would guess, around 2 decades. We have very ambitious targets. The national target for 2030 is to reduce the climate impact from transports by 70% compared to 2010. And then we have, since last year, we have greenhouse gas-based incentives for low blends, which is pushing this in that direction. And then, of course, you need to have mandates on a very high level. I think it's also important that the industry is cooperating with the decision makers, the politicians, as well as with the academia. It's true, our reduction rate is around 95% compared to fossil petrol, which is very high. It might be the highest in the world, actually. I think there's 3 reasons for that. It's the farming side, which is very efficient, so we're not using that much of diesel and nitrogen, for example, to grow the wheat that we are using. The second one is the plant. We're running it on fossil-free energy, so we're using steam coming from a combined heat and power plant, which is running on biofuels. Also, the electricity we're using is CO2 neutral. We are buying so-called green electricity to the plant. And then the third reason is that we're capturing the CO2 from the process, and then we are processing that CO2 into carbonic acid, and then it's sold to the market and mainly used as carbonic acid for soft drinks. It's not up and running on a commercial level yet, but we have been doing some tests, and we have been cooking some meals with this. It's a fungi that we have actually patented, and you're adding this to the process, and then you will get a product that is similar to corn, that is a meat substitute, vegan protein, and then you can use that for a lot of different type of meals where you want to replace meat. And I think it will, as we all know, especially young people, they want to eat less meat or no meat at all. I think there is a market for this in the future, but we still need to develop it a little bit further, and then also bringing this production from only ethanol and feed production into a food producing plant is also a challenge, because you need to comply with a lot of other regulations and rules. But I hope in some years' time we will produce this type of food as well.